thank you all for these next office hours. We have some nice surprises for you guys this episode. But as usual, let's just give a couple of minutes to see if some more people will join. But we'll soon go into the intro so you guys can see the new faces that we have on the stage. So we were just trying to share the presentation, but there seems to be some issue with the Talk Studios thing. So we'll be sharing the presentation link through YouTube and LinkedIn. So you can also follow the presentation we'll be having here. So I think probably it's quite enough time for us to start. So it's 3 minutes into the hour. So let's get started. I'll give just a brief intro, and then we can jump straight into the topic of today. So as I was saying, welcome to our office hours. This is our first user panel discussion. So we have some invitees from our user community and the community that we have active on Discord and also on these kind of sessions. And we'll explain what this is all about. So this is usual agenda for this office hour session. So it's the same thing. What changes is our spotlight. So the spotlight is just focused on the user panel discussion, and we will have Willy and Luis joining us from the community, as I mentioned. And you have here links for their LinkedIn and their project page. So if you want to kind of dig into their profiles, but probably without further ado, I'll pass the word to both of them. So we can start just first with Willy. So probably a brief introduction from your side, Willy, so the users watching us can know what you're doing and what you're about.
Sure. So my name is William. I'm a 20-year-old computer science student, but I work on projects important to me in my free time. I'm here as part of CrazyCo, which is my partner Clara's initiative that we run together. And our main focus is services that really have a focus on privacy and security. And we do the best, we do our best towards this cause by offering these services with no logs, no user data being collected, and no strings attached. Some of these services include a personal email service, a cloud solution with file storage and document editing, a private and ad blocking DNS, and a temporary email service. We all self-host these services ourselves, and we use Netdata to keep an eye on all of them.
Awesome, cool stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Willy. We'll learn more about your setup and also your use of Netdata in the next question. So for now, let's jump into Louis. So Louis, if you could also share a bit about your background and what you're about at the moment.
Yeah, so I've been in IT a while. I started off in software support for a software company. So I've kind of seen that side of things. And then I moved from that side into their IT team and sort of worked my way through there, doing a lot of, all the back end stuff, all the infrastructure, pretty much, every hat you can kind of think of. And sort of worked my way up until I was managing it. And, we had, obviously, aside from the fact that it's an international, won't use the name, but the international company, offices all over the place. But being a software development company, it gives you a very interesting experience of ops and DevOps. So that's kind of my professional background. As far as coming to Netdata, primarily, I'm coming and presenting here as a hobbyist, right? I think there's a lot of people out there who they've got a home lab. Yeah. Hopefully they're like me, they're a techie, you just love to tinker with stuff, you like to play. And, as much as I like to play with stuff, you just want to have a monitoring solution that lets you see what's going on. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and that's really how I came to Netdata, is looking at how can I monitor everything that's going on in my labs, primarily.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Louis. We probably can continue to the next question. So again, you already went about into this discussion, Louis, but I'll pick up from there. So you said you came to Netdata because you like to see monitoring the stuff that you have, in this case, in your own lab. But was there any particular problem or initiative that you wanted to solve from the beginning, and then you decided to give it a shot to Netdata? Basically, how did you come about to say, let's try Netdata?
Well, I'm going to be difficult, actually, because in a way, yes, and in a way, no. It wasn't like, obviously, I had a business requirement that said, okay, look at your solutions. I've used plenty. I came from a primarily WinOps background and now do primarily Linux. And there's a lot out there, right, in both sort of spheres. But there's generally quite a lot of heavy lifting involved in it. And I've been doing this long enough where I didn't really want to spend an awful lot of time sinking into establishing and setting up a monitoring solution. Yeah. So, I looked around, I looked at all the others. I mean, we know their names, right? And you look at it and go, and they're talking about deploying a stack. It's like, that's great. And the techie in me goes, yay, stack, lots of technology to play with. But the ops guy in me goes, there's a lot of stuff to break in there. There's a lot of stuff I've got to now manage dependencies between them, because a stack is like a pancake stack. You don't want it to slide onto the floor. And I looked at that and just went, too much of this is, a self-fulfilling, a kind of cottage industry where what you're doing to set up your monitoring isn't actually giving you any value. Yeah, you're spending all this time maintaining it, setting up and then maintaining it and everything for what? Yeah, whereas all you really want to do is have the monitoring data. Yeah, and so I was looking at all the options, and most of them they're heavy lifting. I mean, I'm no slouch. It's not that I can't do them, but it's just you go, okay, I've got to do the planning, I've got to deploy it. Then you've got the ongoing maintenance, and you go, it's a lot for what you're getting out of it. Especially as a hobbyist, where there's no scale trade-off or cost benefit sort of trade-off, where I can go, well, if I put a certain amount of effort into this, it's worthwhile, because it then lets me manage 100,000 machines or something more efficiently. Yeah, from a hobbyist perspective, I'm going, well, this is another thing I got to install, another thing I need to maintain, and it's just going to be a time suck. So I'd already played with plenty of them, and I kind of did the rounds, and I found Netdata, and I was like, what the hell is this? And I looked at it and went, this probably isn't going to work, because their installer is one line. First of all, I'm very suspicious of that, because if you look at all the other stuff, it's like, okay, here's your prereqs, and you go through that, then you install this, and usually then you've got a back-end server, and there's stuff to do, right? And then you've got to figure out all the stuff you're going to monitor. And Netdata's like, just run this. I thought, okay, I'll run it on a VM. I'm not running that on anything else. Yeah, that was my first reaction. And I ran it and I was like, So I just went to a web page and I can see everything, and it is picking like up loads of stuff in terms of, monitoring loads of good stuff, aside from the downside of good monitoring, which is now it's picking up stuff that maybe I could have ignored before. And that was a really good experience. And that's kind of really what brought me to it and made me sort of settle on it. That's one of the reasons, is just how easy it was to deploy, and looking at it, how little maintenance it would need on an ongoing basis. The sort of thing that was tied with that was the fact that you were doing like 1 second resolution metrics, which in itself is pretty cool, right? I think anyone who's used a lot of the monitoring solutions knows that's an achievement in itself. But even when you look at other solutions, you've got usually a web UI, and sometimes there's latency in that. Yeah. And so you're never entirely sure, you've got like, I've got I'll have a window open, I'll SSH into a machine, and I'll run like, say, HTOP there or something. So I can just see things live and compare the two and see how much kind of skew there is. Yeah. Because otherwise, in my head, it kind of puts me off. I'm kind of like, well, where am I really? Is what's in the web UI right now? And I found with Netdata, it pretty much was right now. And for me, it felt natural. It felt like this is what I wanted. I wanted basically a HTOP for all my machines. That was kind of the requirement. And I just went, yeah, I like this. Yeah. So that was me.
Excellent, sure. Yeah. So the fast deployment, get it out of the ground, per second resolution, and immediate from collection to visualization thing. So it's key things you mentioned. So
yeah, just nothing to. I mean, since I've been doing it, there's a lot of like tweaks I've done because I love to play, right? I'm a techie, but you don't really need to do most of it. That's just icing on the cake. It's almost unbelievable because there are so many of these platforms out there that, I mean, I don't want to speak about their technical pros and cons because I don't know all of them, but you look at it and go, there's a lot of effort going into, okay, it's running, the logs don't have any red in them, but are you collecting meaningful data? And it's like, there's a massive like story there to get from deployed to it's giving you value. It's like, okay, so I've got to say which hosts I want to run. Okay, fair enough. Okay, I want the CPU. What else do I want? I want the disks. I want this and that, and I want, a lot of it sort of opt-in, which, I mean, there's something to say for that, but in my opinion, it's really painful as someone who just wants to sort of, that's not the value. The value is what it tells me. And if it tells me everything in my environment already, then I'm like, that's good. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Luis. So, Willy, in your case, to share a bit, why did you start using Netdata, and what particular problem were you trying to solve when you came about to say, oh, let me give it a try to Netdata to see if I can get this solved?
Yeah, so for me, for us from CrazyCo, it was quite a bit of a different path getting to Netdata than Lewis. So we were just starting to scale up, adding more drives and more complexity to our infrastructure, and we started wanting a simple way to monitor just the basics of what is going on with our systems. And originally, I think we were using some like home lab type of web interface, just a simple web panel that showed very basic information for, like, it's like a dashboard, just a very basic dashboard with links to other places and CPU usage and download speed. That was basically it. And we found ourselves having issues from time to time with just some of the services having a degraded state or not knowing exactly what was going on. And actually, Clara mentioned that she had heard of Netdata in the past, but she hadn't really had a use case for it up until now. So we tried deploying Netdata, and actually I had the first thought, as Lewis said, that seeing a one-line installer really seems kind of, I mean, not exactly sketchy, but you say, okay, what is this gonna do? How is this gonna figure everything out? But I was really impressed with the first setup. It figured everything out instantly, and it was almost like a sensory overload with all of the metrics that it can track. There was a lot of stuff that I wasn't even aware that was possible to track, and that could have an impact on your system. And so it's really night and day since switching to Netdata. We really can know when something is going to happen even before it happens, and figure everything out in the smallest amount of time possible. So yeah, that's about how we got to know Netdata.
Awesome. Thanks for the share, Willy. And great to know that this one-line installer really made the trick, and and it was able to surprise you both.
The problem is it's kind of implausible, right? Because you're so used to going, okay, I'm going to monitor stuff. I've got to deploy a server to collect the data. I've got to deploy a bunch of collectors. I've now got to configure them somehow to collect what I want to collect and make sure it all works end to end. And you're going, okay, run this one-liner, trust us, and suddenly magic happens. And I'm not sure, like, I'm very skeptical about stuff like that because I know how bad software can be. And I've used some of these other platforms, especially in the Windows world. And, like, it was just very impressive. And sort of going back, I mean, something that did come up is I had some website that I was, multiple websites I was having hosted for me. And frankly, I'd been toying with the idea of self-hosting them, but I didn't really, because I wanted to save the money, right? It would have been cheaper. They weren't getting massive traffic or anything. I could run them. But at the same time, I didn't know I could run them. Yeah. I mean, I know I've got enough RAM and CPU, but there's more involved there, right? The hard thing is if you don't have a profile of what your workload's already doing and how your infrastructure is already running and how the network's all behaving, it's hard to make any kind of educated guess about, well, okay, I'm not knowing necessarily how their system is running, yeah, but I can see how my environment runs and how much capacity I have, yeah. And that was actually a big thing of using Netdata, is that did give me a lot of confidence to move those things on premise. Because otherwise I would have been like, well, my internet isn't super fast. It's certainly fast enough, but what's it like over time? What's it like even down to the switch level? What's going on internally here? It's like, can you do it? Sure, but usually there's quite a lot of work involved, and usually, especially if you want to bridge that sort of compute / network divide, usually there's often quite a separate set of tools. Yeah. Now I know Netdata isn't a specialized network tool, but often the getting that kind of data all in one sort of unified view, it's not easy, and it was easy. It was like super simple. Even when I looked at like SNMP monitoring, which if anyone's ever done that kind of stuff, it's pretty old and it's pretty clunky. It's like no one really wants to do it, right? You look at it and go, this is from the 80s. Like, how is this still a thing, right? And I did it, and just a simple YAML config to state what I wanted to collect, and it worked. And again, it was one of these surprises where 9 times out of 10, when I've needed to collect data that it doesn't do out of the box, it has worked like straight away. And usually the 1 time out of 10, it's because it's a YAML syntax error. And let's not even go into that YAML stuff. But given that it's YAML and we have to live with that, and the whole internet has to live with that, I'm just shocked because usually, you put a config down, you run it, you see, is it in the logs working? Is it on the dashboard? And you kind of expect it not necessarily to work. Like, well, I'm probably going to have to mess with it. And most of the time, I now expect Netdata just to damn well work. Yeah.
We better keep our promises and our standards straight with you. Yeah, we need to. Cool. Before probably jumping to the other question, let me just see on the chat. I think we have some shares. So there's Alwyn also agreeing that the one-liner got better on the native packages, and John is also agreeing that the one-liner is it was a challenge in the first place, but seeing how it went out of the box, it was really powerful. And then Alwyn again is sharing about the distributed nature that Netdata has. That is a win for their use case. So it's also a good.
That's one thing I wanted to touch on that really impressed me, that you can have one single parent node that has a web interface, and then you can have all of these other nodes. We have nodes in the hosts and in containers and everywhere that can have a node. It has a Netdata agent node, and they all communicate back to a single parent node to have this interface that we actually host publicly for any of our users to check up on the systems and see how they're doing. It's one thing that really sets Netdata apart, I think.
Yeah, probably a good share from your case really is your Netdata agent user. As you said, you're using a Netdata parent agent to monitor a bunch of other or nodes or agents. So your case is really just focusing on Netdata agent with the parent dashboard, seeing everything.
Yep, exactly. And it's been working wonders.
And that flexibility is kind of really great, because I know it's going to sound like, oh, Netdata is great, slices bread, but honestly, the out of the box that's another thing that appealed to me massively. Is, I don't necessarily have all. It's not that I don't have the resources, but I don't really want to dedicate a box to, just collecting metrics as a hobbyist, as a home lab. And the fact is, I can store an incredible amount of metrics on each machine with a relatively low overhead, because I don't have to consolidate. If they all have to go into one node, I have to size that. And of course, that's the right thing you want to do. That's the professional thing to do. And you build your resilience around it. But as a guy who just wants to, monitor his labs and some production stuff he has, I don't need to have that overhead unless I want it. That's my choice. I've got all these nodes. They all just report in. I go into the Netdata Cloud dashboard. You don't store my data or anything. I just get a window into it. I can access it anywhere. Yeah, and it live streams it. There's no overhead. Yeah, and because I am, again, splitting it and keeping the data on each node, which, I mean, there's pros and cons to that, right? Obviously, if you want to back stuff up, there's more challenges. But, I don't, it's a relatively small fraction of the RAM footprint and the disk storage footprint, and there's no overhead. I don't need to go, man, I've got another thing to manage now. Yeah, because I don't have the need that other people have when they need to set up an infrastructure. I've done that. I've had that, with hundreds of nodes, or more, talking virtual hosts. But for the guy like me who just wants something to run and doesn't want to go, well, I've got to put aside capacity, or maybe I have to buy another one, and then I'm a techie, right? I'm going, well, okay, with a traditional one where platform where you've got a stack and you've got a front end, you've got a back end, maybe you've got a web proxy. Now the techie in me is going, well, you ought to split those out, right? And it's like, so now you're building layers of infrastructure only so that I'm doing only so that I can, see these metrics. And I go, for me, that doesn't make sense. For me, that's silly. So this is great for me. I don't have to go, I've now got all these agents to manage. I've got all this backend to manage. No. Just install the agent, finished.
Yeah, this flexibility is also a very good point. You have several options. You can do your setup with parent nodes, streaming to connecting to cloud directly, just single agents, or even deploying multiple parents and controlling all these parents through the cloud. So you have a single pane of glass across all parent nodes. So for sure, this flexibility is a good point for Netdata. So probably we can just move to the next question. So this one I'll start with Willy. So in terms of the main pain points or challenges that you have, and how do you think Netdata is helping you solve this? What would you like to highlight in this context?
I think this is a great opportunity to highlight something that happened very recently, just basically 1 week ago. So we have our data stored with a hardware RAID card, and it was starting to have some issues with one of the drives, not due to age or anything. It was just, I think, a faulty drive, and we had no idea until Netdata actually sent out a webhook notification to our monitor channel, and we noticed that it first of all, we realized that it had mega RAID support, which we didn't even know, and that actually surprised us quite a bit. And it told us that it was having problems, and it really helped us to figure that out. And also, matter of fact, that mega RAID support, it only supported reporting a degraded array situation. And actually, Clara, my partner, made a pull request to make it also detect partially degraded and failed states. So it was actually also a nice learning experience to see how Netdata monitors work and how to expand on them, and just the beautiful open source nature of it. And this was one of the problems we were dealing with recently, and Netdata really saved the day for us in that case.
Awesome, great example. And actually, this discussion was something that was followed up in Discord server. So I saw Clara and Ilya from our side discussing on this, and then of course Clara went ahead and made a pull request to improve this collector. So it was really a good thing. And thanks for Clara and you for helping on that.
Of course.
So then passing the question to Luis. So in terms of the main pain point and challenge that you have or that you're looking at, and how is Netdata helping you solve this on your setup?
Yeah, so for the most part in my kind of environment, you're mostly concerned with capacity planning. I'd say that's one of the main things. But when I moved my my websites on premise, I was, even until fairly recently, having some challenges because I was getting multiple sort of, timeouts each day. Not a lot. I mean, I'm sort of monitoring it sort of, I can't remember I'm doing it every second or every 5 seconds, but I get certain periods during the day where I'm getting weird behavior. And stuff like that can be really hard to track down. I mean, what do? And it's like, well, you go in the logs, but there wasn't really anything in the logs. And the problem is that logs are kind of fairly, by and large, they're kind of noisy, a lot of them. A bit of a bugbear of mine, but most logs tend to be slightly on the noisier side than I'd like. So the problem is you get stuff happening and you go, well, is that anything to do with it? And if you think it's correlated, well, which direction is the causation, right? Is this the cause of your problem, or is it a side effect, another side effect of the problem? Yeah. So I actually found the web or HTTP monitoring really useful. I just stuck a couple of VMs up in Microsoft Azure, put them in different locations and just had them monitoring it. I've got systems on premise that monitor it over the local network. And it just made it so much easier to see where the problem actually was, So, I mean, that really did help. But, kind of going back to what was kind of touched on, the kind of surprising things, the first thing that or not just surprising, but surprising, like you learn stuff. First of all is the amount of effort that's gone into all the sort of, on every chart, there's like a little description of what this is and why you should care. And it's like, this is like a treasure trove on its own. Yeah. Because I've learned stuff, and I mean, I've been around for a while. I know a few things, but I learned stuff there, and even stuff that's kind of cool to know as a techie. Like, I've got quite a few, for example, Raspberry Pis in here. Got a cluster and a few other standalones. And as soon as I installed Netdata, I was getting alerts for entropy. And I was pretty sure that I wasn't in a black hole, so entropy probably wasn't a problem. And so I was like, well, what the hell is that, and why should I care? And also, why is that an issue on only the Raspberry Pis? And so it got me looking at it and going, okay, it's only the Raspberry Pis. Right, okay. And I was looking at the chart and going, it doesn't seem to have a pattern to it. It just seems to be a bit like the uptime chart, like it's just a straight kind of linear line. So it's kind of like it's a fake thing in a sense. It's not really fake, it's real data. But I'm like, so why does that look that way on a Raspberry Pi, but not on a normal server, or a workstation? And I was like, okay, so entropy, looked at the description. Okay, so this is probably being used maybe for things like random number generation and things like that, And I went, well, the Raspberry Pi doesn't have a real-time clock, or the Raspberry Pi 4. And I was like, okay, so it probably doesn't have a real data source to generate anything. And so suddenly I was like, okay, so now I understand actually. I always knew real-time clocks were useful because they made sure that your date and everything was set right when you boot up, and you don't have any problems when you boot and you get into your OS, and certificates and all that. But it never really occurred to me that there was an interesting dependency potentially on, generating random numbers, for example. But I wouldn't necessarily have learned that without that. So I know it's not really what it's for, but as a techie kind of guy, I find that interesting.
Very nice story, and it's, as you said, it's very a big effort to put these kind of details on these charts and on the description of the metrics. So this is really good to see the people value this. So thanks for sharing, Luis. So I think everything is under control on the chat, so we can probably continue to the next question. And I think this should be probably our last, and then we'll go to the open questions from the community. So in terms of features, I'll start with you, Luis. Is there any kind of a specific feature that you most value on Netdata besides, of course, things that we already discussed here? Anything you would like to highlight?
Well, some of it's standard, right? I like, obviously, the custom dashboards. Obviously, I know there's going to be more work on that. But for example, I've got a dashboard which is just everything that I care about for my websites. So it's, it's the HTTP checks, it's DNS checks, because I'm doing loads of those. It's HTTP checks which some of them hit cache and some of them are designed to bypass caches, for example. I've got DNS stuff because obviously we know when DNS goes to crap. I've got ping tests and stuff, loads of things all in sort of one view. I say because that's not necessarily a unique thing, but the ease to creating a dashboard was so good. You just go add dashboard and you just start typing, or you can choose a node and just scroll down and see what you want, rather than just going, okay, how is this represented in the config? What's the special namespace name for this monitor, right? Because that's a real pain. And so it seems like this is an obvious thing that loads of solutions do, but in a way it's not, because you have to often figure out what that is, or you go on Google and go, okay, in product X, what is the CPU metric? Or you find a pre-built chart and you go into the properties of it and go, okay, what is that actually pulling back? So there's a story of effort there. And so the way that you can build the charts is really good. That's a big thing for me, even though it doesn't sound that great. It's a really big thing. I mean, that, and again, sort of less direct, is my experience with the Netdata team. I mean, I use a lot of Ansible, for managing stuff. And if anyone's looked at their GitHub stuff, well, I'm not going to say anything more, but let's just say that if you look on the internet with open source, there are degrees of responsiveness, would be the polite way of putting it. And so I was really shocked when I found I could actually get directly in touch with Netdata developers. Because I mean, in the company I used to work for, no way you're doing that. 5 levels of fire before you could, and 3 levels of tech support before you can reach a developer. Your server must better be on fire before you can talk to a developer. So I was like, well, I can talk to this person. And that's kind of been the default. of being able to directly talk to developers, then being responsive as well, because of course they could just be like, okay, hey, go away. And then, I mean, there's Discord thing. No exaggeration. I've seen somebody raise an issue there, which it's not a GitHub issue, right? They've just gone, hey, this is something. What is this? Is this a problem? And one of the guys has come along and gone, yeah, that's not right. And literally within an hour, he'd fixed it. I've never seen that. And this wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to correct a typo. This was like, the code needs changing. Yeah. Okay, it's not a major rewrite, but the fact that he just jumped in, did it, and it was done. And it's like, oh, well, if you're on the nightlies, which is usually the default, you're going to get that tonight. I was like, that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So, I mean, the reason I come on a call like this is not because I'm like a fan person, because I'm really not. I'm not a fan of things at all. But because I had such a good experience with the product, but also the team behind it. That they weren't just like, here's a product, deal with it, yeah, or here's a product, give us loads of money. It was like, we're human beings, we know you have challenges, let's work together and make this product better. And that should just be how stuff is in open source, but it often isn't, and certainly not to that degree. So that, for me, are the selling points, what I have found are the most valuable.
Amazing share, Luis, and thanks for this feedback. It's really important for us and for the team to know that we have users like you that are willing to be available, to jump on calls, to share your pain, share your experience. So as you said, it's a way we can work together to improve the product, both for you as a user and us to get the product in a better position to support you guys. So thanks again. Then Willy, from your side, in terms of features that you find most valuable on Netdata, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to say that I fully agree with what Luis said about the team being available and being able to talk with actual people involved with the project hands-on in the community. It's a really beautiful community, I think. As for features we find valuable, well, of course, apart from Netdata being the best way that we can use to track what is happening with our infrastructure, I think one of the things we really enjoyed was that it has an option for a self-hosted interface, so that you can, if you want, but you don't need to rely on you guys' hosted product. So we can host our own interface and keep it on our services and just talk between our systems with no reliance on the outside world if it all ends from one day to the other. So yeah, just having the local web interface is a really valuable feature in our opinion, and it also lets us put it public for the whole world to see what's going on with our system. There's only a few things that I think could be improved with the local web interface, which is porting maybe some of the free features from the cloud option to the local setup. For example, like the functions and the horizontal scaling. But other than that, it's a great system. Another thing that comes to mind that's really essential and really has gotten a lot of use for us is the webhooks and the alerts that you can receive. Like we've had a few occurrences where the webhooks, as I said, really helped us figure out the problems in no time at all. As I said before, with the RAID system, and another situation that comes to mind was we were getting DDoSed at some point, and Netdata first of all alerted us that it was going on at all, and then the web interface let us see that let us see what kind of attack it was, and in the details what was happening and how we could prevent it. And so it let us quickly deploy some improved Cloudflare rules that stopped it immediately. And one last thing that comes to mind, another instance with the webhook was that a service was filling up the wrong disk with temporary cache data, and so we quickly saw that this was filling up when it wasn't supposed to be, and we deployed a virtual scratch disk, so to say, to just dump the temporary data into and resolved it right away. So yeah, I think the local web interface and the webhooks are some staple features that are really essential to us and are really well done.
Cool.
Actually,
Amazing.
I had a funny story. I think I can tell this one, right? The features that I found useful was the machine learning, the anomaly rate advisor sort of stuff, because this was about a year ago. I was getting kind of, periodic general alerts, that seem to be tied to specific nodes, where multiple metrics would kind of go, oh, help. And the anomaly advisor helped me correlate which metrics were associated with these spikes. The funny thing is, it turned out it was when the Netdata agent was being upgraded. So that was funny. That's why it's funny. I wasn't sure I could tell that one. But I mean, it didn't have to be the Netdata agent. But it was a good example of using Netdata to troubleshoot Netdata. So I actually have found that fairly useful.
But probably, if I recall correctly, this was probably in the beginnings when we made the release of this anomaly rate thing, because I think since then we have improved the detection of these kind of things to not cause these false.
Well, yeah, because I haven't had a problem for a long time. No, it's much better now. But I thought it's a good example because hey, it shows when we as Netdata we don't hide anything. We're not trying to make the product look amazing. When I say I like it and it does these good things, it does these good things. It's not because we're trying to give a good impression. This is my genuine experience. But that's why I can tell a story like that, because it's like the anomaly stuff was new. I was like, okay, I'll have a go at that. So I'm bringing up and it's going, okay, these are all the things that are associated with it. I'm going, okay, that, and I'm going, hello, I've got like significant RAM usage change around this time for the Netdata process. I was like, okay, so what's going on there? Went to the Netdata logs and went, oh, I've got a service stop start. Looked at my automated updates and went, okay, I did an automated update. Okay, fine. That's my fault. That's my bad, right?
And actually, to add to this transparency that you're speaking about, if you guys go to the overview dashboard or to the single agent dashboard, on the table of content, there's a section called Netdata Monitoring, where you have a bunch of details of internal metrics from Netdata. Probably there's already too much information there because we use it a lot for our internal debugging and troubleshooting. We'll probably start kind of putting some of these optional. But if you want to see the insides of what's happening with Netdata, this section is really helpful, so you can understand how the tiers, how the replication, the streaming, all the stuff is going on with your agent. So again, for the transparency topic, this is really also helpful.
Yeah. And again, sort of going back, I like the fact that it just uses so little resource. Because I don't know, like the professional in me goes, well, CPU is there to be used. If you're not utilizing it, you're wasting money, right? But on the other hand, if I look at the CPU chart or something, and I go, well, it's sort of averaging 40% and not really doing very much, I kind of cringe inside. I go, well, that doesn't seem great. That doesn't seem very optimized, does it? Like, that's the techie in me. But Netdata, as far as I can tell, uses hardly anything. And yet, it's still kind of hard to, you go to the dashboard and go, it's monitoring like a bazillion things every single second sampling is. And you go, how is it not just chewing at least 20% CPU? Like, easy, 20%. What's 20% for most apps? Yeah. But seriously, it's like 5% or less sometimes. Like, it's really good. Yeah.
Probably just picking on something that Ilya is sharing on the chat, it's a good call out, Ilya. I know Willy was speaking about the functions on the case of the agent UI not being available, and the reason because of that is because these functions may bring sensitive information. So if you see the top and the processes running and information that is really kind of should not be exposed to everybody. Our web UI is available without authentication, so we need to be careful when we expose these functions. There's actually a GitHub discussion going on our Netdata repo to speak about different options, because we are using, in this case, Netdata Cloud as an SSO, so you can authenticate and be sure that you are authorized to see these functions. You don't need to claim or connect the node to cloud. You just need to have a cloud account that will act as an SSO to your agent. So that's a good call out. So we know this about this point, so it's something we will try to work on. But yeah, that's kind of the reason for now why it's not available on the agents.
Gotcha. Of course, makes sense.
So this was kind of the last question. So probably before passing to open questions from the audience, just checking if Willy or Luis, you have anything else you'd like to add, or all good from your side?
I think I'm good. With the things you just talked about, I mean, that was something I liked. I didn't really want to be spinning up, a reverse proxy and putting authentication in it. That's great when you've got the need for it and you've got to go all in. But for someone like me, that's a headache. I love the fact that that was taken care of and I could just log in with a Google account. That makes life very easy for me. I've got enough accounts to worry about and enough authentication without another thing. So I'm very happy Netdata does that for my use case. My use case, of course.
Okay, so probably passing to the audience to see if there's any questions. So I'll be kind of looking to the chat if anything pops up. If you have any questions for Luis, for Willy, or for me, of course. So it doesn't seem anything popping up. You guys were very clear on your sharing your experience and the details. So probably I can quickly go to just complete the presentation, and if anything pops up, we can jump onto that. So let me just complete. So as you saw, this kind of panel discussion is for community members to share their experiences, so understand practical applications. It's really good to engage on these kind of discussions and focusing on exploring these use cases with Netdata. As you saw, this is a live informal event, and this is also a call out. If anybody of you that is listening or watching this later, if you're interested to be a panelist, we'd love to have you join us on stage. So if you would like to share your kind of experience or share your kind of use case, reach out to us. We'll definitely love to have you on board. So yeah, there's not a question, but John is saying that he's saying thanking us for doing this. So again, Luis and Willy, of course, really helpful to have you on stage. So just to complete, in terms of questions raised by the community to wrap up the office hours, there's the first one that was the one that Willy shared on his experience. So the one with the mega CLI and the array that was having some issue. So the collector was written a long time ago, and it was looking to just a specific state of the array. So yeah, Clara made a PR. It's already merged into the nightlies, and I think even to the release, because we did the release today. It should be there. So yeah, you can follow the details on the PR on the Discord thread where this happened. So kudos to Clara and of course to Willy for participating on this. Another question was about the user saying that Netdata wasn't storing more than 8 hours on unraid setup. This was a DB mode DB engine. So the solution is to increase the disk space allocated to this on all tiers. And again, the disk space will depend on the number of metrics that your agent is collecting. So you'll need to kind of tweak it. And that we have on our documentation a kind of a formula you can calculate this, but In this case, it's really increasing disk space, so you can increase the retention. It's under the control of your setup.
Hopefully the calculator app website will get an update at some point, so that you can kind of put your numbers in and figure out what you need. I haven't had an issue because it's using so few resources that it's not become a problem, and I can't see how it would be. But it'd be nice to have that.
Yeah, I think once we did all this rework on the DB engine, we never get back the calculator in. But I think it's a good input, Luis. So we need to bring it back because I think it's helpful for users. Cool. And the last point was about how to set up, including the web GUI. So a user had just installed Netdata. Looking to the config file, he just saw kind of almost an empty file. In a fresh install, you usually have these config files with the minimum, or just in some cases not even present. If you're not changing the defaults, you don't need to have a specific config file for that. But here, the device, if you want to change anything on the configs, is to use the edit config shell script provided with Netdata, because this will get you a copy of the stock configuration file, and from there you can edit your configurations as needed. So if you go directly to the file and edit it, or create a new file without using the shell script, you're basically creating a blank file. So here is the device to always use this shell script, because it helps you kind of get the standards in place. So yeah, that was the last.
And if anyone is like me and they manage their configs using Ansible, there is a community Ansible repository by Netdata. It is a little bit long in the tooth. I mean, it functionally works. I've done some testing and made some changes, but just a shout out that there is going to be a major piece of work on that. Hopefully, I mean, probably not this year. We were so close to Christmas, but pretty soon. That I presume I'm going to have some fairly significant input on, because I'd really like that to expand. Because I don't know, Ansible seems like the standard, and it's very easy to manage Netdata that way. So the plan is just the standard stuff, of course, configuration. But I've got some playbooks that can manage alarms as well. So I think people are going to hopefully find that helpful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this. I think it's really a good call out, because if we get more people contribute to this kind of repositories and this kind of playbooks, it's easy to get to help each other, basically.
Yeah, and also just to get a sense of what people want, because it's potentially a huge piece of work. I mean, it's like, well, do you just do basic config, or do you make it possible to have every single setting as a configurable value? And it's like, well, there are pros and cons to both sides, but if you know what people really want, you can prioritize that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if more people want to jump on this repo and contribute, or make or discuss, engage on discussions, it's really helpful to understand what's the best approach to move this forward. So yeah, on the chat, yeah, I see Elias saying that we should review probably our DB engine disk space size default one on installations. So it's something first to consider internally. And I think that's the last message. So we probably
There's just one last thing that Clara mentioned to me on Discord, that she just noticed that the webhook links for the alert notifications, they point to of course the Netdata cloud. So if you have it self-hosted, the link won't really be useful to it. Just a minor nuisance that she had noticed and asked me to mention, but no big deal really, just a little nuisance.
Okay, cool. Probably if we don't probably don't forget, if you could ask Clara to open a bug or something, I think it should be something we could figure
of
it
course,
out.
Of course.
Yeah, but thanks. So to wrap up, again, I think I said this quite a few times. So Luis, Willy, it was really a pleasure to have you here. Good, really good to hear about your use cases and your experience with Netdata. I hope we can get more like these user sessions going on and more people jumping in. So yeah, this was really a good time, and thank you for participating and being the first, let's say, to experience this first time event.
the baptism of fire. Well, thank you for inviting me.
Of course, thanks for having us.
Cool. Then we'll wrap this up. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.